Hello, everybody. Welcome to the weekly Pond webinar. We will wait for a few people to trickle in here as we're getting started, but we have a ton to cover, so we definitely don't want to delay too much. A quick reminder, Pond is the host of this webinar. I'm Mitch Stein. I'm the founder and CEO of Pond. Our members get $50 in their account for every webinar that they attend. So please fill out the survey at the end so we know you were here, because we want to give you that credit. And we'll post the link here, and we'll have it on our site, and we'll also be in the comments. And you can use those credits for anything within the Pond marketplace, all kinds of tools and services that nonprofits need. So check it out, even if you're not on Pond yet. Without further ado, I definitely want to get going because we have so much to get into, and we have an amazing group of panelists on a topic that I need to learn about. So I'm going to have my pen and paper out taking notes, and I'm sure all of you will too. Last thing to share is please introduce yourself in the chat. Why are you here? Are you confused about something? Do you already have a question? We are super interactive. We will take all of your questions from the chat. And so just don't be shy. And with that, I'll hand it over to Robin to kick off intros.
Thanks, Mitch. I'm really excited to be chatting with you guys today. So my name is Robin Mendez. I am the VP of Marketing at Tiltify. We offer fundraising solutions for content creators on YouTube and Twitch. We're also the founding partner of all of the fundraising stuff that you see on TikTok. So just super excited to be here today.
Awesome. John, you want to go next?
Yeah. My name is John Hernandez. I run a technology nonprofit that's based in Texas, but we work throughout the country. We work on bridging the gap in technology and nonprofits. And we started a program last year where we are recruiting micro-influencers to donate their influence to local nonprofits.
Amazing. And Ashwath, do you want to finish it up for us?
Of course. Hey, everyone. Excited to be here. My name's Ashwath, and I'm the founder and CEO at Social Current. We're a DC-based agency plus platform, and we help brands connect with influencers on TikTok, among other platforms. We also focus on short-form content and how nonprofits can tackle emerging media platforms like TikTok, Snapchat, YouTube Shorts, and all that good stuff. We're also a almost fully Gen Z run team, and I'm excited to be here.
Amazing. Well, got a lot of great intros from the chat that we're trying to throw up on the screen so everyone can see else is here. Just as you can imagine from how everyone introduced themselves, we've got about like 6 platforms and 10 topics to get through. So I think it'd be really helpful to set the stage and just start with Gen Z is the topic we're here. And we obviously want to talk about the platforms that where you find them on. But why is Gen Z so important to nonprofit work? Like why are they underestimated? Why should they be engaged more? I know all of you have a lot to say on this. Ashwath, as our resident Gen Zer here on the platform, would love to hear from you first.
Yeah, of course. So young people in Gen Z care about impact and care about nonprofits. Mm-hmm. And so, there's already a tie-in to why they would engage with your nonprofits because they tend to be more socially minded. They tend to care about your cause more. And so I think that's just the main reason nonprofits should consider engaging with Gen Z, because Gen Z is more likely to, engage with you and engage back with you. So that means higher conversion rates. That might mean, higher audience building. And so that's just straight up the reason you should engage. Gen Z wants to engage with you.
Yeah, I love that. Robin, how have you seen that play out across the Tiltify platform?
Yeah, I completely agree with Ashwath. Like, this group of individuals really defines themselves through the good that they do in the universe. And so that resonates in kind of every aspect of their life, whether it's the things that they're doing for fun and social, whether that's what they're doing for a career, like they really value. And I say they, I don't think that's so unique to Gen Z. I think there are people of all ages that find value in that. But I think what we're seeing is generationally, there's a new group of people that are coming up that really put importance in inclusivity and put value in themselves and how well they are going out and making this world a better place. And so it kind of just resonates through all aspects of their life. And so philanthropy is just a natural way for them to engage in that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And John, I feel like I hear from a lot of people, they'll be like, oh, we're an older nonprofit, so Gen Z is not relevant to us. Is that true? Like, are there organizations that it's more or less relevant to be focusing on this topic?
No. And the big issue, they're afraid of adapting. And,
Mhm.
Gen Z is, I hate to use this term, I know we've heard it, but they are the new normal. The idea of anyone growing up without technology now, that's over with. We're the generation, millennials, Gen Xers, who have nostalgia. We know what dial-up was like. We know how important postcards used to be, and that emotional attachment. For them, it's something they've never experienced. They've grown up with phones. They've grown up with instant tech, instant knowledge. And so it's up to everybody else to start adapting to this new generation that's coming in.
Well, and just to add on that, John, if an organization thinks that Gen Z is not important to them, do they have a 10-year plan? Because, like, this is the next group of people that are going to be your major donors. If you are not working to establish those relationships today with the new generation, you're really missing out on the potential 10 years from now or 15 years from now. So this is a longer term growth strategy. If your organization is blinded to that, then that's a big red flag for me.
Yeah, great points. And as someone who is often talking to organizations, how do you see people successfully pitch like the ROI of a more intentional strategy or focus on serving Gen Z or being more present on platforms where they are?
So I think, when you think about ROI with Gen Z, with young people, it's the most focus is around audience. So like in the long term, you're building an audience of people that, are engaging with you, that are donating, that are showing up at events. And so the best way to track, ROI is how many people are you bringing out? How many people are you growing your audience by? And then obviously, over time, you can continue to track ROI on donations, ROI on purchases as Gen Z continues to enter the workforce and as Gen Z's purchasing power increases. And so I would say like audience, purchases, and awareness is really the main ways to track ROI that we see.
Yeah, I love that reframing of intentionally setting out as an audience growth and engagement tactic. I think something, Robin, that a lot of people struggle with is like, when is the right time for it to be a fundraiser, right? Like when are you just building awareness or growing audience, and when are you kind of like pushing for dollars? Like, what's the right way to manage that with this audience in particular?
Well, I think it's a paradigm shift in terms of how historically charity and nonprofit has thought about the value of an individual. So I've got this amazing friend, Marcy Maxwell, who I love to quote. She talks about major gatherers. And so I feel like this is a generation of gathering where they gather friends, they gather micro donations, to John's perspective. And as a result of being really good at pulling together people, in the context of a cause or in the context of something that they're passionate about, they can also do that from a fundraising perspective. So, one of the things we really challenge our charities on is, if you have a human being who can gather the equivalent of 1,000 donations every year, and they come back year after year after year, that adds up pretty fast. Why would you treat that individual any differently than you would treat an individual who writes you a check for $5,000? And so I think it's challenging the historical definitions of the value and the ROI, that if I can gather 20 people to donate and end up bringing in $2,000, not only did I bring you the money, I brought you a whole new set of people that you can start building a relationship with. And in theory, you're cultivating those relationships in a way where they're going to start gathering people to the table. So, I think it's looking specifically at like, how do you what is true ROI, and how are you looking at the lifetime and the larger value that an individual brings to an organization? And it's more than the check that they can write.
Yeah, and I think just to add on to one of the pieces around mobilizing community, that's why you see kind of this popularity in giving circles. And, Gen Z, and not only Gen Z, but a lot of people are starting to put together giving circles to give to causes, because that allows individuals the opportunity to contribute, on a monthly basis, but also be a part of a community that is making a difference together. And so like if organizations tactically can figure out how to leverage giving circles, that could be a surefire way, in the long term of getting donations, of mobilizing people at the same time, which I think is a very important thing for nonprofits to consider.
Yeah, one of the things that we push to a lot of the orgs we work with is there's a new level before you get into that fundraising, and it's friend-raising. It's having that group of social ambassadors that you've cultivated who can help push out the message, and then you can start with the fundraising.
Well, and I think that's such a good point. We see that 100% when we start talking about fundraisers that are in the Twitch space. So I look at Twitch as kind of an example of what TikTok is going to be 5-10 years from now. So the charities that invested time in building those one-on-one relationships with the content creators in the Twitch universe early in the game, those content creators, some of them are now multimillionaires. I mean, when we start talking about Mr. Beast or Jacksepticeye, like these guys are pulling in some serious cash as individuals. And when they do fundraising efforts, they're giving in addition to kind of pulling in that community that's willing to contribute towards those causes. So I think, by investing early and being kind of first to market in terms of building relationships with folks in these different social spaces, you're really doing yourself a huge service in terms of the future planning of your organization and the relationships that you're building in that space.
Yeah, it's like your content creator is your near-term major gift opportunity if you engage with them effectively.
Seriously, look at St. Jude. I mean, they're doing some magical things over there.
Yeah.
And the best part is if you can, sorry, I was gonna say the best thing is if you can supply them with content by getting them out to volunteer, I mean, that just strengthens the relationship. I mean, nonprofits have so much content and storytelling that they just have trouble getting out, that you have this new generation who's eager to cultivate it.
Yeah, great point, John. We have had a bunch of great questions in the chat about specifics around fundraising. Before we jump to that, I just want to hit on one thing related to the fact that nonprofits often get a bad rap for being behind. And there's a lot of issues with turnover of employees, especially younger employees. And I think there's also a huge opportunity to show that you're current and relevant and like listening to your own staff and people. I know Amanda brought up in the chat that even their volunteers tend to be a lot of Gen Z. Like, it's so intersectional. It's not just a fundraising conversation. Like, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that today, but I just wanted to throw that flag out there. And if John, Ashwath, Robin, anyone has something to add there, I just want to hit on that internal kind of team management piece too.
Yeah, so kind of from my perspective, I think when engaging with Gen Z from an internal team, I think it's important to listen. I think it's important to, not just, hear someone, but actually listen to them, give them opportunities to grow, give them opportunities to explore these new tactics. And I think that's the number one thing that, sometimes nonprofits may struggle with doing because, is the messaging going to be right on TikTok? It's probably not going to be right on TikTok, and it probably shouldn't be right on TikTok, right? And so I think just giving more opportunities for Gen Z to kind of do their own thing, I think is extremely important for nonprofits to consider.
It really gives them a moment to shine too, right? That's what every employee, especially a young person in their early career, the more you can make them feel valued, that's huge. If you're able to say we have an intentional focus on this channel and we want your input, since that's where you spend your time and get your entertainment, there's a really great opportunity there.
Well, and it's just reflective of diversity. You need to reflect diversity, not just in age, but in culture and background and ethnicity. Like, all of these things make the richness of the experience that you're able to put back out into the world better. So I think it's important, and staff feel that. They understand when the things that they value and deem as human beings as important, if those are also the things that your charity is valuing as important, it goes a long way. That's huge.
Awesome. Okay, I want to get to a couple of these really great questions. So there were two that I think had some overlap. So Scott mentioned that he was curious about swag. This is a common way that nonprofits obviously reward and incentivize and engage with their audience. How does that translate to Gen Z? Are there a different type of swag? Do they not like it? Is it wasteful? Like, is there a good does anyone have a good perspective on how that relates to engaging with your Gen Z supporters?
I can kick us off on that one. I think it really depends on who you're talking to amongst Gen Z. I think that's a very broad question around swag, but I think, things to keep in mind around swag can be sustainability. So how are you sourcing products? How are you, what are you providing? How environmentally friendly is it? How relevant is it to the work they're doing? I think that's very important. And then how useful is it? I think everyone gets, 100 pens. Everyone gets, 100, mugs. How useful it is to them, and then how is it sourced, and then being clear about that. I think a cool way to incorporate, maybe using like a company that donates proceeds to a cause on the swag. Things like that might be a great way to think about swag. I think everyone loves swag. Who doesn't love, free stuff? But I think thinking about like how you're getting that free stuff is important.
Well, and one thing we coach charities on with swag specifically is you want swag that is going to make people feel identified with your charity and identified with your cause. So, if you're trying to decide, okay, should I do a mug or should I do a hoodie? If those things are connected back to fundraising, then they can become pretty valuable. We had a group called 100 Thieves do a fundraiser on our platform, and it was all the sales of a pink hoodied sweatshirt. It became an exclusive item. It was a huge deal. They ended up like for $1,000 donation, you get a hoodie. And they ended up raising 20 grand in like 30 minutes. It was something insane. My numbers are probably off, but I think the types of swag that people can wear or that they can use to label themselves and identify themselves as being part of your cause, those are the types of swag items that we see be the most successful in the space. The best swag that I love to promote, and I'm looking to see, stickers. If you can give somebody a vinyl sticker, they're relatively inexpensive. They end up on their water bottles or whatever it is. Like, it's just, I've got them all over my laptop. Like, vinyl stickers are cheap and they're fun and people love them. So if you're trying to figure out like where to dip your toe in, you can also mail them, which is nice in terms of like, it's a cheap way to really acknowledge somebody.
There's a company called Sticker Mule that actually also handles all the mailing for you. So I know a bunch of people love working with them. So we can put that in the summary at the end.
Oh yeah, I mean like sticker, yeah.
That's great. So kind of along similar lines, Robin here asked about stewardship. How do you communicate with your Gen Z audience in the right way that's effective and meaningful? John, do you want to kick off on that one?
Yeah, I think one of the things that organizations really need to keep in mind is social media is going to be constantly changing. I mean, again, a lot of the Gen Zers won't recognize Vines. Vines were the TikTok for our time. And now Vines are gone, TikTok's here. We don't know what it's going to be in 3 years. Mm-hmm. I mean, we saw the big shift from MySpace to Facebook. I mean, who predicted that change? So coming up with your content messaging is more crucial than ever. Measuring out your stories. Here's my 1 minute story. Here's my 2 minute story. I think is what's really important. And it'll fit into every platform that comes out.
And John, you touched on this earlier, but I think it's a really good point. Many folks are looking for content. They want to share on their social media platforms, whether it's TikTok or whether it's Facebook or whether it's YouTube, whatever that is. And so if you can help by feeding them valuable information or feeding them good content, in many ways, what we're seeing is that philanthropy has become a form of entertainment, that these content creators are really using their charitable activity to better engage and build the relationships with their followers. And the followers love it because it's authentic. It's, hey, this content creator that I think is funny or entertaining outside the context of philanthropy also is doing good in the world. And so it's an interesting kind of marriage whenever they start promoting philanthropic activities on their own social media channels, where the response, both from their audience, but also from the corporate sponsors that they're working with, oftentimes turns into like a 1 + 1 = 4 sort of a scenario, which is cool.
Yeah, just to kind of that real the content creator piece, I think storytelling really becomes important there. So if you're, doing a campaign, making sure that the content creator or the influencer you're working with, has their own story to tell as part of the campaign. For example, we did a campaign around immigration. And so we picked influencers and content creators who were immigrants themselves, and they shared their immigrant story. We didn't have to tell them, here's the script, read it, because they were telling their own story, and that did engage the audience better. And so I think it's important to, find the right people for your cause and help them tell their story instead of just tell your story again.
Yeah, and sorry, Ashwath, right as you were talking about that, Dan put this question in the chat on one-off promotions and how do you just build more community with influencers, or as Robin has flagged, they don't like to be called influencers. Maybe that's the first step, is you refer to them as content creators, which is what they're really their job function. So I don't know if Robin or John, you have some thoughts on this topic too.
I think it's, again, what we talked about earlier, you have to start with friend raising. You have to bring these people in, give them the tour, make them feel like a VIP donor, and explain why your cause is important. Touching a little bit back on the storytelling, I think, even goes beyond with this generation. It's not just for content, but it's also for transparency. I mean, you're talking about the generation that has all knowledge at their fingertips at any moment. If you can't prove you're doing what you said you would with their funds, with their influence, it starts breaking up that trust.
And I think it's really interesting when you start talking about how to cultivate and build that community. I think Discord is a good place, even if you're not necessarily getting people to engage with you on a day-to-day basis on Discord. I think specifically around campaign season, being available on Discord is like immediate tech support. They're going to reach out to you with immediate questions that they want answers to, like this. They're accustomed to using Discord in a similar way to how we're using chat. I like to think of Discord as being the behind the scenes chat channel for anybody who's working on Twitch or YouTube. That's how they're communicating with one-on-one with each other in the moment. So I think it's important to have a presence on Discord. I don't think you necessarily have to be on it and be super active all of the time. Now, we do see some folks using Discord in fun ways. The Humane Society of the US was doing gaming night, where they would just have folks show up on their Discord channel, and they would play games, D&D, whatever, dice games. I mean, and even just silly stuff like Jackbox, they're just hanging out. So I think, when you're trying to determine your community building strategy, community building strategies have to be founded in authentic relationship building. I like to compare it to what you're doing with the Major Gifts program, where you have the resources in place to build authentic, real relationships with these people as human beings. Sometimes that comes to light in terms of, there's a person fundraising, and so I go into their chat channel while they're there as the organization and say hi. For those of you who have ever watched a Twitch stream, if you show up and say hi, the community loses their mind, because they're like, oh my God, Robin from St. Baldrick's just showed up. And I say that because I saw Robin in the chat. Robin from St. Baldrick's just showed up in my chat. And it just legitimizes what they're doing as a content creator in terms of fundraising. And it just shows them that what they're doing is important to you as an organization. So taking that moment to have a one-on-one connection with them is also super important. One last point, because I feel like I probably said too much on this. What we also see is that if you're sending out really long emails, they're not reading it. I mean, if they even get it, which they probably don't because they don't check their email, that there are other communication channels. So Twitter DM is what we keep seeing over and over and over again is the best way to start the outreach to build the community, and then to stay in touch with that community member once they're part of the family. So, that's a challenge for many nonprofits, because oftentimes the people who own the social channels live in the marketing department, and they may or may not have friendly relationships with the people who are in the fundraising department, which can make that kind of challenging.
Yeah, and you brought up a number of terms that I want to make sure the audience knows what these things mean. So this is probably a good point in time to do a bit of like a 101, and we can go through a couple things like what is Discord? You know, what like, because I just think for a lot of folks that might not be super familiar. So Robin, maybe you start just explain what Discord is, how it works, like where it's relevant, and then I'll throw out a few other terms and I'll just pass them around the group to help give some 101 definitions.
I'm so sorry for doing that, because that was one of the things when I first started working in this space I found so annoying. I was like, you're speaking a foreign language and I don't get it. So thanks for calling me on that, Mitch. I appreciate it. Discord is a platform for those of you who grew up in the 90s. I compare it to like AOL Instant Messenger. So if you were doing AIM back in the day, like in college, it's very comparable to that. So it's almost like a message board system where you can go in and create groups, invite people to join, chit chat back and forth. Yeah.
And who is the primary user of it?
There are a lot of people that are using it. So, I mean, I think it's become very ubiquitous across the space. You know, in my universe, what we see is content creators who are using Twitch typically also have a Discord channel where they're communicating with their people. And it's more of a longer term message board kind of interaction than what you might see in like a chat that would be happening alongside your stream. We also see a pretty large crypto community that's using Discord. So, I mean, it touches lots of different spaces. So it's kind of a message board community building tool. Ashwath, I see you shaking your head, like, chime in here. You know more about this probably than I do.
Yeah, I would say it's just a general community building app. If you look at, Slack for, organizations, Discord for communities, that's pretty much how I would define it. Everything you said, that's what Discord is.
I want to touch back a little bit what you said, Robin, about maintaining communication and how Twitter DM is really popular. So as a tech nonprofit, one of the tools that we've used to help other nonprofits is SMS. Text messaging is huge because it works through all the generations, because there's no creating an account, there's no having to download an app, and it works for Gen Z, it works for Gen X. Everybody knows how to text.
Yeah, great point. Just sticking on this idea of some 101, Ashwath, if someone's been living under a rock and hasn't seen someone using TikTok, would you mind explaining what it is and why it's relevant for nonprofits?
Yeah, of course. So TikTok is a short form video app. It started out with just a 1 minute limit, increased to 3 minutes, and now 10 minutes. It's where young people and all sorts of people create content, majorly young people. It has 100 million active users in the United States. They hit their 1 billion download mark recently. And so it's obvious that a lot of people are on TikTok. A majority of Gen Z, a majority of millennials are on TikTok. And then, with Gen Z and with millennials, attention spans are really low, 8 seconds, 12 seconds. And so TikTok can become a really easy way to, reach these people in a very short period of time. And then what I'm saying for TikTok will translate to Instagram's version of TikTok, which is IG Reels, YouTube's version of TikTok, which is YouTube Shorts, and then Snapchat Spotlight.
Yeah, I don't know if everyone knows this, but TikTok was the most visited URL in the world last year. Like, that is just mind-blowing. More than Google, more than searching something at Google, people are going to TikTok. And if that's not like motivation enough, I know there was a question from Alana in the chat. It's like, if your board can't understand that it is the most visited platform of anything in the world, like, I don't know how else you can communicate that. I mean, I know I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on this question too, but just some things that have already come up. I mean, it's about audience growth. You can demonstrate that in your ROI. It's about, like Amanda said, bringing volunteers. They're super engaged volunteers. If you need people contributing time as well as treasure, they're really good gatherers. I mean, there are so many reasons to be spending time in this space. But if someone wants to add something that we haven't brought up already, feel free.
Well, I think you...
Sorry,
go ahead. I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, if you are having a difficult time convincing your board that the future of your organization is not a priority, you should look at who's sitting on your board and how is that board actually reflective of the mission that you're delivering, and how is it actually reflective of the people that are fundraising or volunteering with your organization. So, you know, I think it goes back to some of the systemic unhealthy behaviors in the nonprofit sector that as younger minded woke people come up, you know, need to work towards fixing so that there's a better diversity of voice, making those decisions and setting the prioritizations for our organization.
And one thing we've encouraged a lot of nonprofits to do is because, I mean, the first thing a lot of them think of when they think they're bored is fundraising. I mean, so that's why you have that older generation. They're established, they have businesses, they have the connections that can bring in, you know, the large sponsorships. But what I always say doesn't hurt is to have a community advisory board. You know, pick a president from a club at your local university, pick a president from another local club at a high school, get their feedback. Tell them about what you do and what would actually interest them and their peers.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, if your organization has any touch point or connectivity with community members that are in the Gen Z generation, give them a role in the organization, right? Create a, like John said, some sort of community board or junior board or something, and give them a real voice at the table. Alana, I think that is, because I think it was Ashwath that said earlier, like this generation, much like anyone, they want to be heard, and they want to be heard along the lines of their values. And this is a great opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and to just touch back to kind of the previous question, and also, you know, around Gen Z working in the startup world versus nonprofit world, I think there's some branding there where that nonprofits could try around like social impact versus nonprofit. So, you know, communicating your impact, communicating your social impact opportunity for Gen Z to join might be a way to, you know, get them to join and get them to be part of something, to kind of, you know, pass over the nonprofit connotations that Gen Z may have or may not have.
There's a good question in the chat that came up too from Laura, and I think if I'm reading this correctly, is it's about, you know, what if you don't see a way that like your cause necessarily like traditionally resonates? You're not like saving the environment or stuff that's like super hot button topics for young people. And this is, I guess, more of like a branding, messaging, marketing question. But what are ways through these platforms and through content creation on these platforms that you can find the niche within Gen Z? Because Gen Z is like a ubiquitous term. So there is a segment of that audience to reach. I don't know, Robin, if you've seen this done well for specific orgs.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, at Tiltify, we've got over 4,000 different charities on our platform. So people are looking for the cause that has impacted them specifically, or they're looking for a cause that would be fun to engage with. So I think if you happen to have a cause that is more niche, and so you have a smaller audience of human beings that are directly impacted by it, that's when you have to think through how programmatically can I make this an engaging opportunity for a human being to get involved. You know, we mentioned this earlier, but I think it's also about how are you connecting that person after they've had a fun experience to your mission. So this is a really old school program, but I think it's fun and cool and really connects people. But the MS Society with their bike tours had this program called Pedal Partners. And so they would have a person with MS sign a bandana, and they would give that bandana to the cyclist that was participating in the event. And it was just a physical connection to another human being that was being positively impacted by the fundraising and activity that fundraising cyclist was doing. And, you know, MS is actually a pretty rare disease when you start looking at populations, but we've all heard of multiple sclerosis. Like, it's something that's part of our, you know, normal charitable lexicon. So I think if you can first bait them with something fun, then engage them in a real way to authentically connect them to the mission. That's how you're going to build a longer term relationship with somebody who may or may not be familiar with your cause or with your mission.
Yeah, and I'd add one thing to what Robin said. I think that's great. And I just also think, Laura, like virality isn't the goal. Like it can be a little distracting to think like, oh, well, there's 1 billion people on TikTok, so that means I should have 100 million people supporting my cause. The beauty about using TikTok and Twitch and other platforms is you can hone in on that specific audience. So even if there's only but even with military families, I mean, there have to be thousands of kids where that is super relevant to them, or people, teens and people in their early 20s. And your goal is that you're going to provide really engaging content for that audience. And it's not necessarily that you're reaching millions of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the beauty, is you can, like, the whole algorithm around TikTok is not just based on overall likes. There's a really powerful way that it surfaces new interesting content based on people's interests. Actually, Ash, I am not an expert on this. I'm not an avid TikTok user. If you could maybe explain a bit about the algorithm and how that really works, I think that's something people probably miss if they're not super familiar with the platform.
Yeah, of course. Happy to, touch upon it to the little bit that we've observed. So one of the main, things that TikTok ranks is watch time. So like, how long are people watching your content? And if they tend to watch it longer, it's going to be promoted to more people, because that means, people are engaging. It also means that people are staying on the app more, which is good for TikTok, which is a whole nother thing. But, how long are you engaging with content? And then TikTok will send you more content that's similar, and then see how long you're engaging with that content. And then based on that, go forward. So watch time is the main thing that TikTok takes into consideration. And then after that, there's of course the likes, the comments, the shares. But, the main metric you should consider is like, how long are people watching? But also, if you create a 15-second video, you don't want to spend, 10 seconds out of the 15 introducing yourself. No one really wants to see you introduce yourself. People want to get into the content. And so being really tactical about the video length and what you're creating is very important to do.
Well, and I might add that they have a charitable team at TikTok who will sit down and have a one-on-one conversation with you and your organization about how to craft that strategy based on your own mission and based on the content that you are creating on the platform. We would be more than happy to help your charitable organization make some connections with the team at TikTok, and they can help coach you on what's coming up. How should you be doing this? How should you be shifting your content strategy based on what they're seeing? They're very open. It's a great group over there.
Awesome. Yeah, I just pulled up a question from a bit ago where I think that's super relevant to know that there are a lot of resources directly from TikTok. And there are a lot of great creators that create about using TikTok well. So maybe in our recap, we can also include some interesting folks to follow that are a bit meta and actually just explaining how TikTok works. And I think that could be helpful. And we've talked a lot about TikTok in general. There was another really great question that came up from Maurice around just the concept of being interested in an organization versus a cause. And I think this cuts across a lot of different topics we've touched on, from fundraising to staff to community engagement. John, I don't know how you've necessarily seen this within your community, and I will hide the question so it's not hiding your face.
Again, this generation is interested in organizations. I mean, brand awareness for them is huge. I mean, that's how content creators are paid. It's by pushing brands, and it works because it's a growing industry. I mean, so I wouldn't say they're weary of organizations. It's about transparency. Again, they want to know, where did my dollar go? Did it go to admin? Did it go to program? Or did it go straight into feeding someone for the day? So the more content you can do that's behind the scenes, and we've done a few campaigns like this, follow the dollar, follow your donation, showing the ins and outs. Like, hey, it's not just about getting a plate to somebody. We got to source the food. We have to provide the utilities to house the food. We have to pay for our food handlers licenses. All the things that go into getting that plate from point A to someone who is in need. So I wouldn't say they're weary of organizations. They are cause driven, but if you can broker that trust with them by providing the necessary content, you will have, long lasting relationships with Gen Z.
Yeah, I think, go ahead, Ashwa, sorry.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think there's more of a shift in why Gen Z is interested in organizations. And it's no longer, this organization is the most popular organization ever. This organization has, X number of followers. I think, what is the organization giving me? Are they teaching me something new? Are they, how are they giving me value? That also matters. And so thinking through, how you can spread more awareness on your cause through your organization to your audience. So is that an explainer? Is that, breaking down a complicated term? What can you teach your audience? How can you help them? Is also another thing that draws, individuals to different organizations, and something to consider.
Yeah, I love that. And I know, John, you mentioned some micro donation and micro influencer campaigns that you've worked on. We had a comment come up in the chat too from Nathan around micro giving. And I think that also connects to micro giving can be really directly linked to like your $5 is like buying that pair of bucks, right? And make that super tangible. How have you seen that done effectively with the organizations you work with?
We've actually spent the last 6 years diving into text marketing, text donations, built around the idea of micro donations. We have a whole SMS platform that we've developed. And again, it's the idea of building baby steps. It's about having an event, everybody knows their phone number. That's the best thing. Everybody knows their phone number. It's our new social security number, if anything. So asking someone for their phone number to communicate, to make a donation is easier than ever. But just sending, here's a donation, here's a little video about what that $5 went to, and then doing the same thing the next month. But consistency really is the name of the game across any platform you're using, whether it's TikTok, Facebook, or SMS. You have to really have that content strategy in place before you kind of take the dive in to start posting.
Well, and John, to just back up what you're saying, oftentimes your cell phone number is more valuable to you than your cash. I'll give you $5 before I'll give you my cell phone number, because I don't want you texting me unless you're somebody who I care about and want you to be pinging me in the middle of the day. My cell phone number is guarded. So I think if you're in a position where people are willingly giving you their cell phone numbers, then texting is a great platform to build relationships and to build that, information delivery pathway.
Yeah, and I don't know the exact figure, John, you might know it, but text open rates are like 98% or something relative to email, which is like 13. It's like 90%. Uncomparable.
And I'm going to touch a little base about texting, because I think, social media is level one. You bring them in, and then maintaining content, something that's affordable, especially for nonprofits, is texting. You're not having to pay to re-reach the people that you already reached. Now you have that funnel, and the next step is texting and getting that messaging out on a consistent basis. And even with volunteering, we created like an Uber Eats type platform for pantry deliveries. And we did away with apps, web apps. All of it is done through text. You'll get a text message. And so what we've trained, we have over 1,000 volunteers on this platform across the country doing pantry deliveries. And what we've trained them to do is treat these texts even more important. Everybody looks at a text that comes in because you have some relationship value. You gave a person or an organization your number because you saw some type of trust. So with our text messages for the pantry delivery, we push the idea that it's even more crucial that you're the only person getting that text, and at that given moment, you can actually help someone just by replying yes.
Love that. One thing we've talked a lot about that I'd love to dig in a little bit deeper, and Robin and I had a good laugh about this in advance when my first example of an influencer was Jennifer Aniston, and I've been laughing about that ever since you said that, Robin. It was so funny. The fact that Robin's kids have no idea who Jennifer Aniston is, and I think there was a whole level setting of like, what is a celebrity versus an influencer versus a content creator? When are they useful for what? Robin, I would love for you to start us off on that conversation.
Yeah. I put kind of influencer and celebrity in the same camp. And I'll explain that in just a second. But so celebrities are famous because they're just famous, like they're on TV or they're in the movies, but that doesn't necessarily equate to having a strong social following. They may or may not be active in the social space. They may or may not have a strong following on Twitter, on Twitch, on YouTube, whatever other social channels, TikTok. They may not have a social following there. And so what we see, especially when it comes to fundraising, is that when we start talking about influencers, so influencers are people who have a strong following on social media. Sometimes they are celebrities, like sometimes it's Justin Bieber, sometimes, like there are celebrities who have done, sometimes it's Kim Kardashian, like Drake. There are people that live in this space that do really well on social and are kind of taking advantage of those platforms. But not every celebrity is going to be a content creator or social media influencer. That it's the following that they have on their social channels that kind of defines them that way. So when we talk about influencers versus content creators, and I'll be honest, content creation was one of those terms that I felt was foreign when I first started working in the space. Anyone can be a content creator. Mitch, you're a content creator because you're hosting this podcast and it's amazing content. So it's a term that is very universal, that anybody who has a social following and is posting content in the universe, whether it's LinkedIn or YouTube or wherever, they are a content creator. And so it's a more universal term that captures the entire spectrum of people, regardless of how many followers that they might have. So it's much more universal, it's much more open, it's much more friendly to anybody. What we see on our platform is that actually what you might categorize as a mid-tier content creator, so somebody who has fewer than 10,000 followers, those are our best fundraisers. Those are the ones who are bringing in the most cash consistently for the organizations that they're fundraising for, and they are not household names. So, there are celebrities in the content creation space. I think, Mr. Beast comes to mind. Like your kids probably, if you don't know who Mr. Beast is, your kids probably do. Your staff members who are cooler than you probably do. And there are people like that in this universe. But those people are rare, in the same way that like reaching out to Jennifer Aniston, it's probably easier to get in touch with Jennifer Aniston than it is to get in touch with Mr. Beast. Like, Ashwa, back me up here.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of add on how we define, folks on social is we just say creator. So we remove the content part of it. We just, say creator, and then we focus a little differently. We do a lot more awareness campaigns, and so we focus on the 100 to 1 million on TikTok, and we focus on engaging them, and they tend to be, macro influencers. But they're not, large influencers. Like someone on Instagram with 1 million followers is very different from someone on TikTok with 1 million followers, just because of the nature of TikTok. And so we focus on creators with 100 to 1 million because we've seen they have the best awareness, and they have the best tie-in to their audience. If you look at statistics on engagement rates, a mega influencer, anyone with over 5 million, has a 5% engagement rate. If you look at a macro influencer, they have an 18% engagement rate. That is a huge difference. And so we just ignore the 5%. We just focus on the 18% because that's where people are engaging, and that's more of a connection with the audience. And then if you even go lower, engagement rates only increase because you have less followers, you're more close to them. And so for fundraising, absolutely, under 10,000 is the best because they have the strongest tie-in. They know each of their followers. They interact with them all the time.
My boss said this when I first started, Michael Wasserman, and I just thought it was brilliant. So if you're planning a walk or a running event for your organization, do you insist upon Usain Bolt being there? Like, no, but he's the best runner in the world. Why wouldn't you invite him to come? Like, maybe you'd invite him, but the chances of him showing up are pretty low. Same in this universe, that like you want to cast a wide net to bring the people in that are passionate about your cause and care about your cause. So, I really encourage people towards more open language in order to invite and engage a larger portion of the population. And so if you're talking about influencers, if you're talking about celebrities, oh, I'm not an influencer, I only have 10,000 followers. Well, you raised $50,000 last year for 4 different charities. Yeah, no, you're pretty important to me, but I wouldn't necessarily categorize myself as an influencer. And for the record, none of those things are true. I do not have 10,000 followers. I wouldn't even come close to being a social media influencer, but just to give an example.
Yeah, I can see the word in itself is a bit, it could be a little ostracizing, right? Because you might feel like you don't fit into that category. And I think your point, both Rob and Ashwath, is that anyone can be both a creator and a fundraiser or friend raiser for your organization. So the inviting language, open language is so important. Ashwath, one other thing I just want to hit on quickly is I think most people assume engaging with a celebrity or an influencer or content creator, anyone who we're talking about, is like impossibly difficult, right? That I've got to have great connections or I have to hire like a super expensive PR firm. Can you demystify that a little bit of like how that actually works behind the scenes?
Yeah, of course. So I'll just talk through how we found our influencers and creators, because we don't have any of those celebrity connections. We built this from the ground up, and all we did was email, DM, and use tools like the TikTok Creator Marketplace, which is free. And a lot of it is less about the medium of outreach and more about the message that you're using to reach to them, because how you're convincing them or how you're positioning your brand and your organization makes a lot more difference than where you're reaching them, because a lot of these people do see your messages. They do want to work with organizations because that's how they sustain themselves. That's how they sustain creating content daily. And so how you're positioning it to them makes a hell of a lot more difference than actually where to find them. And so TikTok Creator Marketplace is a very great tool. You should try it. It allows you to shortlist creators. It allows you to add them to it. It allows you to reach out through the platform, and influencers or creators are going to get a notification in their app itself that you want to reach out to them. And if they don't accept, there's no way they miss that, because TikTok sends them reminders, 72 hours in advance, 48 hours in advance, 24 hours in advance. They get like your message at least 6 times. And so, if they don't accept, it's because they don't want to, not because they didn't see it. And so it's very easy to reach out to creators. It's important to know what you're reaching out with.
Well, and the TikTok marketplace is a place that they go to, because this is where they're finding corporate sponsors. Like, this is how they're generating revenue through the platform. So when they see your charitable message, it's in the same place where they're getting money. So the read rates and open rates are much more open in the marketplace than they are, if you were just to send them an email.
Awesome. That's super helpful. I don't know anything about that. So that's really, really helpful. So I know we're running short on time. We've got about 8 minutes left. So I would just give a last call for questions in the chat from the audience. And otherwise, I'd love to just kind of go around the group and hear a bit about like what's next. Like, what is a new emerging trend that you're keeping an eye on, you're super interested in, something you're looking forward to in the next few years that you think is going to be big? John, I'd love to hear you start off. Oh, John, you're on mute.
I'm not a Gen Z, or else it'd be second nature to me. So adding engagement is something that we've really focused on over the last 4 years, and using tech to do that through streaming for telethons, through events, to just make it a lot easier for everyone. The pandemic did this across the board, but it pushed technology adoption with every age group. I think we've advanced 30 years in nature. I think that's what they've said. But using text messaging kind of to allow people to influence an event, whether it's a fundraiser, a gala, a telethon, but allowing them to make a donation and have it go to a certain category, or even if it's a fun category, like what you've seen at Starbucks. Are you voting for, Hugh Jackman or Ryan Reynolds? Doing stuff like that just to give them that one extra level of engagement, where it's not just I put my money into a hole and I don't know where it went.
Yeah, John, I think something that's come up a few times is a lot about content and engaging influencers or content creators. It's just about having fun. Like, it's okay. Like, it's okay to have a little fun. Like, I just want to make sure we say that out loud. That, like, that example, I love that. Everyone's seen that at a coffee shop where it's like, who do you want to go on a date with? Is it Ryan Reynolds or Hugh Jackman? And like, just making things kind of silly and fun engages people so much. And I think it goes back to the question we got from Laura about making your cause relevant and relatable to anyone. It just sort of humanizes you and your brand too, to just like have a little fun with it. And that's what TikTok is. It's fun.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. Robin, do you want to go next? What are you keeping an eye on personally, and what do you think is most exciting on the rise here?
So I would say I'm curious and thoughtfully watching the evolution that's happening with cryptocurrency. It's becoming much more ubiquitous, and like everybody's, it's becoming much more standardized. I don't know if that will remain kind of in that upper echelon of very, very, very wealthy people, or whether that's going to become something that's more universal. But what we're seeing, especially like as the Ukrainian crisis unfolded, is that people were dumping their money into crypto because it was a safer space than the traditional banking systems. So, God forbid, I do not want to see the banking systems have any more disarray than they already, are experiencing with the crisis overseas. But I think crypto is something that'll be really interesting and a bigger thing happening in the charitable space. We're also seeing a movement with very large crypto donations coming from people you've never heard of. So it's a whole new universe of mega millionaire that is willing to really support causes and to take that tax write-off that's becoming more important to them in interesting ways. So crypto is something that I'm watching and interested in.
That's awesome. And there was one other question that came up too about content. I think we didn't hit enough on this, so I just want to make sure we do. That it is not just about relying on influencers or others to create content. Like content you're creating for TikTok to this point it's super portable to all the ways that you're communicating. And I think you can do that by having your own platforms, as this person mentioned, or just being efficient with your time and reusing that content in tons of different spaces.
Mm-hmm. I might add, especially on TikTok, some charities feel like it's got to be super polished and very professional. It doesn't. Like, give your staffer, let them take their phone, take a pic. Like, that's what people are looking for. They want real engagement. They want authentic engagement. They don't want super polished. The super polished videos they slide up. Like, nope, I don't want to watch a commercial. I want to watch somebody being silly, or I want to watch somebody helping somebody. That's what's entertaining. So don't feel as if you've got to invest a lot in video production in order to get started on TikTok.
Yeah, and I think that is there's so much like anxiety around using a new putting new content out there and like how you're doing it correctly. And I just think not being too precious with your content is such a great message for people. Ashwath, could you go next?
Yeah, of course. I think, I'm also looking at the crypto NFT space, but more so also looking at the blockchain space and how the technology could be used to within social media platforms to allow, content creators to maintain access, maintain rights, make sure they're not taken advantage of with their content, with their sharing of content. I know TikTok has a huge audio problem where someone will create an audio, someone can duplicate the audio, and then that causes, a whole host of issues. So I'm looking at kind of that space from a platform perspective for creators. From the nonprofit perspective, I think short form is where, everything is moving. And I'm curious to see, whether we transition or, add to short form video, short form audio, and how that's going to play off in, the platforms. And so I think, for nonprofits, it's very important to have a short form strategy, whether it's audio, video, short form text. Short form is the future, and that's how people are consuming information.
One more thing on TikTok. So I mentioned earlier, Tiltify is the one who runs the donation sticker and any fundraising that's happening on the TikTok platform. They're still in a pilot phase, so not every charity can actually have access to fundraise on TikTok. The first thing the TikTok team looks at whenever they are wanting to approve a next round of charities is how active is that charity on TikTok. So if your charitable strategy is that you want to get on TikTok and you want them to potentially allow you to fundraise on the platform, the first thing they're going to do is look your charity up on the platform. So if you're not actively creating content in that space, the likelihood of you becoming accepted into their fundraising program is much more limited.
Wow, that is amazing insight. Thank you, Robin, for sharing that. And I think that it is along the same lines of the funnel we've been talking about all along, that you're creating content and then that's grabbing audience, turning them into fundraisers and fundraising. So it makes total sense. All right. We unfortunately have to wrap up because I have a lot more questions too for these folks, but thank you so much for everyone for joining. We do these webinars every single week, Thursdays at noon. You'll find me here with another great group of experts. And you'll always get $50 in your Pond account for joining, filling out your survey at the end to just let us know what you thought about it. So don't forget to fill that out. Anyone, even if you're not on Pond yet, you can fill that out and join, and you will get that perk right away. So thank you so much for all the questions. The audience was fantastic. And Robin, John, and Ashwath, this was wonderful. Thank you, everybody.